All right, we are almost to 3 minutes after, so I'm just going to kick us off. Welcome, everyone, to Eyes on the Prize. This is a Thousand Eyes Lab Day with a little bit of Meraki MX in there. So without any further ado, let's dive right in. Most of you know me. I'm Andy, Cisco Solutions Engineer for Public Sector. I'm a portfolio engineer, so I'm not a Thousand Eyes expert by any means, but I think that this tool delivers a lot of real value that people should know how to use it. And it comes free with a lot of our licensing, so I'm trying to get people to embrace it and adopt it. I've been at Cisco for about 3 years, and before coming back to tech about 6 years ago, I was a retail visual director at a local department store chain. Um, so Christmas displays and mannequin dressing and cosmetic setups, those were all my wheelhouse back in the day. But now it's about dashboards and network configuration and all the rest. Working at Cisco is a lot better. This is the agenda for today. I'm going to try and keep it roughly to this schedule, but who knows? If we get off track, that's all right. It's a small group, so feel free to just turn off, unmute yourself and ask your questions as they come up. We'll start with a brief presentation on how ThousandEyes does what it does, and then we'll also hop into a demo of activating ThousandEyes on the Meraki MX, and then we'll flip over to the actual ThousandEyes dashboard, and we'll configure a test, and then we'll finish off by going through the views of the test, like the test results, and then also some of the pre-built dashboards that are really valuable. Let's dive right in. So this is a modern network nowadays. And today's modern networks are very difficult to troubleshoot. And why is that? It's because we used to have on-prem resources and we used to have on-prem users and we had a firewall at the perimeter. We could see all the traffic on the inside. Everything inside was trusted. Everything outside was untrusted. But it's not like that anymore. Now we have our users everywhere. They're at home, they're in the office, they're in the car, their coffee shop, or halfway around the globe. And our resources are everywhere. You know, we have them on-prem still. We have private cloud, public cloud, SaaS resources, partner networks. So we're trying to connect to everywhere. And ThousandEyes addresses these challenges. And I listed 5 of the top challenges that we face with these hybrid style networks. The first one is that hybrid networks hide root cause. But ThousandEyes gives you end-to-end visibility so that you can see across all of these different network segments, the ISPs, the cloud devices, and the SaaS layers. Another challenge that we face with modern networks is that traditional tooling only shows us what we own. But ThousandEyes is a tool that reveals what's happening across the entire internet, where you have no control of the devices. So we can see the path on unowned network segments. Another common challenge is that our user complaints. If we're trying to manage a network for customers, they're oftentimes vague. It's like, oh, the network isn't working, or the resource is down. I can't get to Office. But with ThousandEyes, we can pinpoint the exact where the slowdown is occurring, from device to app to provider. And then also modern apps, they oftentimes depend on third-party services that fail silently in the background. But ThousandEyes will expose every external dependency and its impact in real time. And lastly, issues come and go. They're transient. So the problem can disappear before the engineer is even there to look at it. But with ThousandEyes, we have continuous monitoring of paths and of performance so that we have that evidence always available. So this, sounds like a pretty great tool for network engineers, at least. So how does ThousandEyes do these things? The basic explanation is that there are agents, there are tests, and there are views. Agents are both deployed by you and positioned all over the globe by Cisco in ISPs and public cloud providers, and a whole bunch of different locations. These agents are used in synthetic traffic tests, and they run periodically. The agents are also used to collect dynamic real-time performance metrics on endpoints. Now, each of these agent/test combos has a resulting view. These views can be used to measure a specific resource's performance over time, but the views are also aggregated. They're aggregated to produce a picture of the overall internet health. And what we're looking at here is the Internet Insights dashboard. This is the aggregated data, which has been compiled from observed outages from anonymized customer tests, traversing those ISPs the cloud providers, all those segments, those middle miles. Basically, everybody benefits from everyone else's tests within ThousandEyes through this Internet Insights dashboard. And it builds this by collecting global network and app layer telemetry. It also aggregates and anonymizes the data from all the customers. Uses algorithms to detect and correlate failures. And then it identifies the outage points, and then it visualizes those outage points on this map here. This isn't down detector, so we're not actually like reporting what sites themselves report as down. Instead, this is real-time aggregated data from billions of tests every day. That gives you a high-level view of the internet's health. So ThousandEyes kind of reveals exactly where the internet is having problems. Any questions on the agents, tests, and views? Because we'll dive a little deeper. All right, we're going to go into each one of these things. We'll talk about agents, we'll talk about tests, we'll talk about views. So first with agents, you configure the tests to utilize the agents to run the tests. And there are three different types of agents. We have cloud, enterprise, and endpoint. Agents in different locations help give us a better perspective on the overall traffic, the path, and the end user experience. And you can kind of view these agents like three different vantage points. Cloud agents can be thought of as external and external looking in. Enterprise agents can be thought of as internal looking out or looking across your internal network. And the endpoint agents can be thought of as the end user experience. So cloud agents, oops, sorry about that. Cloud agents are positioned globally. You don't have to configure them. They just come with the ThousandEyes solution, and there's over 1,000 of them. They're all over the globe, a ton in the US, of course, major cities. They're hosted at cloud providers or ISPs. They're really good for testing SaaS resources. So if you want to know if Office 365 is up, you can just use cloud agents to test it. It's also good for testing your internal resources to make sure that the outside world can actually reach you. For example, can your website be reached from people in Chicago? But they can't see inside your internal network because you have a firewall. But they can see DMZ or externally exposed resources, anything that has that public IP address. Cloud agents are really easy for first tests since they don't require any kind of configuration or setup on the ThousandEyes user end. You can just log in and start kicking off tests with cloud agents. Next up, we have enterprise agents. These can run in VMs. They can run as a Linux package on a Raspberry Pi, in a Docker container, switches, on the MX, which we're going to do today, or even in your Azure environment. Different form factors of the enterprise agent kind of have different capabilities, so you do have to watch out for that. And we'll get into some details on which devices, which agents can run which tests in a couple slides. Now, an enterprise agent is really good for testing SaaS reachability from your campus or from your branch. So if you have a resource you need to use, Salesforce or our quoting tool, CCW, I could set that agent up on my internal network and then ping out to that SaaS resource or run tests against that SaaS resource. Enterprise agents are also really good for monitoring your WAN connectivity to your internal private resources. So you could have an enterprise agent at a branch location, and it could be testing access to your server hosted in your data center. Then we have endpoint agents. These show the end user experience, like I was saying, and it's via a lightweight client and a browser plugin. It works on Windows, Mac OS, and Android at this point. And they provide data that the other agents can't get, like connection type, whether it's wired or wireless, the Wi-Fi strength, the path trace to the service. They can run scheduled tests, but they can actually capture real traffic as well. You can configure monitored domains, and then anytime that endpoint reaches out to that domain, it'll take a little capture of that test traffic. And endpoint agents can also do dynamic tests that are based on application usage. And this is specific to collab solutions. So we're talking WebEx, Teams, Zoom. It can take a dynamic test of that traffic as the end user is on a Zoom call, and it can give you the statistics around that call and the call quality. That was a lot of information. This was the agents. Are there any questions about agents? Next up, we'll talk about some tests. So tests are primarily scheduled through the ThousandEyes dashboard, and there are layers, 5 layers of tests. I know you see 6 boxes, but there's routing, network, DNS, web, and then voice layer. And you can kind of think of them like the OSI layers because they're nested. If I run a web page load test on ThousandEyes, it will return the lower level of network test, and it will return the lower level of the BGP results because they kind of build up to that web service of a page load. So let's go a little deeper on each layer. Routing focuses on BGP, the routing protocol of the internet. It's used to detect route leaks, hijacking, unexpected changes, and route flapping. We have a feature called BGP route visualization, and that shows your current route to the destination network, along with updates and path changes. And then users can share these BGP results with, let's say an ISP is having a problem with a flapping route. You can snip this BGP result and share it with them. The next layer is network. This has 2 tests, agent to server and agent to agent. Agent to server is unidirectional. It basically gets it measures the quality of the roads and the traffic between 2 points. So these are statistics like loss, latency, and jitter. Agent to agent is a bidirectional version of the same thing, and it requires 2 agents, whereas agent to server, you just have to ping or test against a URL. The next layer is DNS. Every internet request requires a DNS resolution, so this is a really important step for any service that you're trying to reach over the internet. We have 3 different tests. One is DNS server, DNS trace, and DNS security. The DNS server allows you to test a specific DNS server for a specific DNS record. DNS trace, you'll put in the URL and it will query the authoritative server, and then it will query the domain's child authoritative server, and it will work through the hierarchy in order to get a result and then return it. So that's a little better at showing the overall function of the DNS resolution around the domains that you're trying to access. DNSSEC is used to verify if the digital signature of the DNS record is valid or not, and it will fail if the DNS server is not DNSSEC capable. And then we have the web layer. The web layer has a lot of tests. First up is HTTP server. It basically checks for a 200 success message from an HTTP GET request. Then we have page load and transaction tests. Both of these require a Chromium browser, so only select agents can run a page load and the transaction tests. Page load will keep track of every object that the page has to deliver to you, and it will record the time it takes to do that individual object. And then it can be displayed in a waterfall format so that you can see like the exact thing about that page that caused it not to work. Transaction tests let you program in clicks or submit files or log in, things like that. We also have API tests. They can be set up against any kind of API, HTTP API endpoint, and it monitors performance, availability, and functionality. And we have FTP server tests that allow you to authenticate and download against an FTP server. So web really has a bulk of the functionality. One moment. All right, and then we have voice. Voice tests, we have a SIP server test and we have an RTP stream test. And these are bidirectional tests, so we do need to have 2 agents involved. The last item is dynamic tests or unscheduled tests. These show a snapshot on endpoint agents only of the monitored domains that I had mentioned. So it'll return things like browser errors or response times, page load times, and an overall experience score. So those are the 6 test types. Is anyone running any ThousandEyes tests in their environment right now?
I believe we are, Brent. I don't know if Brent's on. He can comment to what we are doing, but yeah, we run a few.
Excellent. And does anyone else have ThousandEyes entitlements that they're looking to set up in their environment? Well, I'll take your silence as an indication to move on. So a little more on tests. Not all tests are created equal. Certain agents can do certain tests, and different tests return different data. So it's good to have a variety of tests along with a variety of agents around the country or around the locations that your users will be connecting to these SaaS resources from, because that gives you a bigger view, a higher level view of the overall traffic paths. But let's start at the top of this. You may notice BGP is not supported on any agents, and that's by design. BGP requires access to live routing tables from actual BGP peers, and that's something that ThousandEyes gathers through its global network of BGP collectors and not from deployable agents. So the BGP part just comes free with the ThousandEyes solution. For the network layer, we have the agent to server test. Those are supported on cloud agents, enterprise agents, and endpoint. It's unidirectional. It's really lightweight. You're just doing an HTTP GET, and it will reduce loss. It will return loss, latency, and jitter statistics, along with traceroute. For the agent-to-agent tests, these are bidirectional. So for that reason, we cannot use the endpoint agent to run these. And that's because the endpoint agent is not as static. We could close a laptop and all of a sudden that agent shuts down. And then our metrics on our ThousandEyes dashboard would show all wonky because that agent was basically turned off. So for those, it's cloud and enterprise agents only. DNS test, also cloud and enterprise agents only. That's because it's kind of a heavier weight. It requires more processing resources, so they don't want to run it on the endpoint. For the web layer tests, we're talking about HTTP server, page load, transaction. The HTTP server can be done by any agent, but the page load and the transaction have to be either a cloud agent or an enterprise agent. And if it's an enterprise agent, it has to be browser capable. So there are some devices that cannot do that. Like I think the Raspberry Pi, if you loaded the enterprise agent onto that, it's not capable of doing the Chromium browser bot. API and FTP tests, also cloud and enterprise agents only. Same with all the voice tests. So then these tests, they produce views, and each tab on the left side of this dashboard here has a separate views. So network and app synthetics has its views, endpoint experience has its views, routing has its views. And these let you dig in deeper to a specific resource's performance, whether it's problems with endpoint experience or potential routing issues or what have you. And we talked about this a little when introducing the tests, but different tests here on the left side return different metrics. So these different metrics provide the clues to what may be failing in the network. And this blue chart here will give you the quick idea of which metrics are returned by which tests. But the magic isn't in the individual views. Those are pretty cool, and we'll get to them. But it's really in the dashboards where they all come together. It's how we make sense of what we see across our entire environment of tests with all of these different metrics coming at us. You can design your own dashboards, and you can build them from different widgets. But for the quickest time to value, I would recommend the pre-built ThousandEyes dashboards. They bring together the test data automatically, organizing it and visualizing the metrics from your cloud agents and your enterprise agents and your endpoint agents. And it puts them into ready-made layouts that really require no initial configuration. These dashboards also use widgets and such as maps or tables and time charts. And these present results from the underlying tests that you've already configured. And it gives the users an immediate, coherent view of availability, of performance, and alert conditions across your environment of ThousandEyes tests. Because the built-in dashboards are structured around test categories and common monitoring scenarios, they seamlessly aggregate the data from all of your existing tests and they display it in a context, allowing your teams to quickly interpret the network and application health without building dashboards from scratch. So that said, let's get into the demo. If you have Meraki, go ahead and log into your Meraki dashboard. If you have ThousandEyes, also log into your ThousandEyes dashboard, and let's just dive right in. Okay, in Meraki, they refer to it as active application monitoring, and it can be found under the Insights tab, Active Application Monitoring. It'll bring you to this landing page where we have a a demo video that shows you how to step through the onboarding, but we're going to do that today, so no need to watch the video. All you have to do is click try it. And then if you don't have an account yet, create a new account. This will link it to your Meraki account, and it will give you 30 days of free tests tied to your Meraki account. If you do have your ThousandEyes already set up, which I do, let's click authenticate. It'll pop up your single sign-on. There we go. And it'll return me to the Meraki dashboard. Oh, I do have to confirm the integration because it does share data. So it'll list the data that's shared between the solutions. And then I have to confirm the account that I want it paired with. This is only applicable if you have more than one ThousandEyes account tied to your email address. I want the age Arbany. Confirm. All right, that's set. This just popped up because I clicked it twice just now. If we click next, we have these pre-built applications available. An MX in Meraki requires either the advanced security or the SD-WAN license in order to run the ThousandEyes tests and the enterprise agent on the MX. If you have the SD-WAN license, you get these pre-built templates that will just automatically create the test right here from the Meraki dashboard, and it will populate within the connected ThousandEyes dashboard. So let's do that today. I'd like to test WebEx. We do have to enter a subdomain. Mine is cisco.webex.com. Then it'll ask which enterprise agents in my Meraki network I want to use. Let's use this Victory School District. And we just click Start Monitoring. And it's as easy as that. I now have a appliance set up. That's my MX. And it is set up as an enterprise agent connected to the ThousandEyes dashboard. And I created a test. If I click View here, it'll show the tests that I've created. And we can see WebEx. And I can disable the test right here, or I can remove the MX as an agent. Like I can delete it as an agent. If I delete here, it will delete in ThousandEyes as well. Let's just quick add a few more tests here because I'd like to see Office 365. I don't think this one requires a subdomain. Yeah, you can just start monitoring. Let's also monitor SharePoint. So that's important to my operations, cisco.sharepoint.com. We'll select the agent, click Next, Start Monitoring. I also want to add a test for Salesforce. Salesforce is important. And I believe mine is ciscosales.lightning.force.com. Select the agent, click Next, Start Monitoring. And let's add one more test. This time I want to do a custom application because you may want to monitor something that's not on here. You very likely want to monitor something that's not on here. So click and add a custom application, click Next, and we can just throw a URL in here, any URL that you want. And I do have one that's important to me. It's CCW, that's my quoting tool. I want to make sure that my quoting tool works and is available. So I'm going to add it, select the agent, and start monitoring. So now I have a whole bunch of tests that I just configured here on this appliance. If I want to see them in the ThousandEyes dashboard, I can just click View Applications and it'll cross-launch me. But as you can see, configuring from the Meraki dashboard is super simple. Let's go look at those tests I just made in ThousandEyes. Log in again. It takes me right to the Network and App Synthetics tab. You can think of the Network and App Synthetics as the cloud and the enterprise agents. Endpoint Experience is your endpoint agents. The Routing tab is all that routing information that's provided from the BGP collectors. And then they have a few more tabs, Traffic Insights, Devices. This can monitor SNMP even. Cloud Insights for connecting to your AWS environment, and then also Internet Insights. But here on this test page, we can drop down the tests, and we can see all of my different tests that I have configured. I'm only interested in the ones that we just made in the Meraki dashboard. So I'm going to come to the labels, and I see that a Meraki label has been created for me. If I select the Meraki label, I can see all of the different tests that I created from the Meraki dashboard. Now, if I click on one of these tests, I'd like to do this custom app test. It'll bring me to the views for that test. Now, I don't think this one has run yet because I just created it. If I want to see the output of a test immediately, I can click Run Instant Test right here in the top corner without any changes, and it will just create that test and it will pull the data that I need. It does take a moment to run the test. Now, if I want to look at the different metrics, I can compare them here. This one still didn't show anything, so let's switch test views for 1 second. Take a look at one of these other ones. Meraki. How about SharePoint? Let's see if that shows up yet. Here we go. I can see the test on the left that I ran. It was an HTTP server test. But as I had said, there were layers. It also ran the agent to server test for the network layer, and it has the BGP results. Starting at the top in HTTP server, we can select the metric that is our primary metric of interest right here on the left side. And perhaps I'm interested in response time. I want to know how long it took to respond. I can add comparable metrics on the right side. If I check throughput, it'll add an additional chart for the throughput values. At the bottom, it shows the average response time of all the agents that are doing this test. It has a map of the location of the agents that are involved in the test. I can take a table view of the agents involved in the test. You can see I only have the one from my Meraki. And I can look at any dependent applications, but for this specific test, there are none. If I go down to agent to server, this is more of a pathing test that also returns loss, latency, and jitter. I can adjust my comparable metrics to look at latency, jitter, and loss. And we can see it's pretty good. There isn't really much happening. Down at the bottom, it shows all of the hops that I go through to get to the endpoint. Some devices do not respond to traceroute requests, and they are just summarized in a large circle that has the number of hops that did not respond. If you click on it, it can expand that out. If you click on it, you can take detailed looks at each hop too, if I select it. So then we also have a map version of this for the agents involved. We have the table version for the path visualization as well. And then we also have the BGP results. This will show any path changes. There hasn't been any, so it won't show any path changes. Now, I have this test. I made it in Meraki, but I want more agents because I think Andy said that having multiple agents from multiple locations gives you a better view of the path of the traffic. I can cross-launch directly into the test settings by clicking the sprocket next to the test name. Here in the test settings, I can find the agent word, and if I click that, I can add agents to it. And I don't just want to know the path from here to SharePoint. I also want to know if I can reach it from Chicago, if I can reach it from New York, and if I can reach it from Los Angeles. So I can select my individual agents in here. I'll click down to, let's start with Minnesota, and let's add a Minneapolis agent. I just want to add one. I don't need all 4 of those Minneapolis agents. Let's also add a California, a Los Angeles, and maybe we'll add that New York that I talked about. I just close this and I update at the bottom. And now this test will be run towards the Cisco SharePoint URL from my agent, from a New York agent, from a California agent, and from a Minneapolis agent. And this will give us a better perspective on how the traffic is hitting that resource at SharePoint. Yeah. So that's the basics of configuring a test within Meraki and then viewing those Meraki tests in the ThousandEyes dashboard and then visualizing or seeing the views and the resulting data from each test. Next up, I'd like to actually create a test. So if you have ThousandEyes and you don't have Meraki, right now we're going to make a test from scratch. Before I dive in, are there any questions or any thoughts that came up? Alrighty. So to add a test, we could add tests for network and app synthetics. So that's enterprise and cloud agents. We can add tests for endpoint experience. And we can add tests for routing, devices. I think that's it, routing and devices. But what I'd like to do is create a cloud agent test because everyone has access to the cloud agents if you created your trial dashboard. So in network and app synthetics, let's go to test settings. We're already on the page right here. And we're going to click add new test. Here we have the most used test types, and then you have all the tests listed down below. I want to do a page load. Now, a page load test actually it completes the TLS handshake. It does a DNS resolution. It does an HTTP GET, and then it loads a page. So it kind of has all those nested underneath, and that's why I wanted to show it today. And the URL that we're going to test for this page load, I want to do that CCW again. That's probably the most important tool that I use in my job. So we're going to see if this works. We put in the URL first for the test, for the resource that we're testing against. Then we configure the time frame. I think every 5 minutes or every 2 minutes would be just fine for me. Down below that, we have the agent selection. And like I said, we want to have views from all angles on this. So I'm going to go to North America, United States, and let's put a California in there. Los Angeles, let's put a Minnesota in there. Another good practice is to use locations that your end users are actually connecting from. Let's put a New York, and I would also like a Florida. So I'm covering most of the population of the United States with these few tests here. You can see I have 4 agents configured. Next up, I can set if I want to have alerts on if these tests fail or flag. If I open the dropdown, I can see all of my alert rules, and I can check or uncheck these alert rules. If you want to modify the thresholds and the settings for the alert rules, that's done under this Manage tab, under Alert Rules right there. But we're just going to keep them as they are. And then we're going to put a label on this. Label is good for easily organizing your different tests that you have. I'm going to do Andy tests. And then finally, we give it a name. This is CCW. Below this, we can change network and security settings. The type of data that's collected right here. Sorry, this is a little small. We also have HTTP preferences, timeout times and response times, along with page load, timeout, and target time for view. I'm just going to leave everything else as default, and I'm going to deploy. So once again, this is a test from multiple cloud agents around the country targeting a specific website for its page load speed. That page load speed also includes an HTTP GET response. It also includes a DNS resolution, and it includes a network data about loss latency and jitter, and the BGP route. Oh, I already had a CCW. Let's see if this works now. There we go. So everyone has resources in the cloud somewhere, whether it's an Office resource or a Salesforce resource. So there's definitely something that you could test against right now that would give you visibility into your environment and your SaaS resources. After you deploy the test, it takes you to this page where we can monitor more use cases. We can check out the test results for this specific test, or we can review new test configurations. Let's check out the test results. So here you can see my test up top, CCW2. I'm currently looking at the page load view, and we're looking at the page load time here. And it looks pretty standard. It's not changing a whole lot, about 1600, 1700 milliseconds. Down below, I can see all the agents that I just set up around the country that are testing this resource. If I click on the table, I can see each individual agent's response for their tests. These ones will take a little bit of time since I just built this. It may take just a couple minutes to give us a response. The really cool feature of page load is the waterfall, where I can select the specific agent that was involved in the test. Let's look at Minneapolis. And I can see from the beginning of hitting that page, how long it took to fully load. And it was about 1,700 milliseconds. Within that, I can see the individual items along with how much time each step in that individual item took. See, my DNS took less than a millisecond. It connected, it did an SSL handshake, send, wait, receive, and then it authorizes, and then it starts downloading everything for the web page. So if there was a problem with one of these JavaScript files, it could ruin the web page access, and we could identify it right here. Waterfall is a pretty cool view. But this test, like I said, came with other nested components. So we have the HTTP server, same breakdown, map of the agents involved, the status by phase. There was no problem across all of them. We can take the table view, which shows the individual agents involved with their response times. If we go agent to server, this again is loss, latency, jitter in the environment. And down below, we can see the different paths the different agents took. Here's the Los Angeles agent, the New York agent. And there are actually two different sites that they're able to hit. And they can go on all these different paths. So if we had a broken link right here, they could reroute through this other path to get to the same end goal. Again, they have a table set up too, where you can look at the loss, latency, and jitter per agent. And if I wanted to switch which metric was showed down here on the right, I could just select the different metric. Now we have jitter, we have loss, we have latency, all three down there. And that's the basics of creating a page load test. Page load is probably my favorite. Like I said, it nests all these others underneath it. But like we have all these tests running, and all of them are individual, and I don't have time to look at each individual test view. So for that, ThousandEyes has built-in dashboards that aggregate all this information, and it can give you a one-shot view of how all your page loads are doing, how all your HTTP requests are doing. If we click the dashboard dropdown up here on the top, we can select the different built-ins. We can also filter by built-in. And let's start with the agent alerts. We can see that we're running all these tests, and these are the number of tests that are alerting. So Netflix had 1 alert. Run Minnesota had 2 alerts, but it's down from 6. So a couple different sites. It gives you a quick glance at the sites that are having problems with the alerts. If we go to the network layer, we'll work our way up. I can see my average loss, my average latency, my average jitter. And I can see the top 10 average loss sites. And right here we have CCW site has the biggest loss of all my sites. Down below that, average latency charts with your top 10 latency resources. Down below that, average jitter with your top 10 jitter resources. So let's say a ticket comes in, it says the network's slow. You can log right onto this dashboard, take a look at this page and identify, well, yeah, it's a little slow because Salesforce has a 3,000 millisecond latency on it. Another of the built-in dashboards. Let's go up to HTTP server. Again, this is an aggregate of all of my HTTP tests that I have running on ThousandEyes. So this is an average of all the tests. It shows my availability, my response time, my average throughput, which is pretty cool. And then the bottom 10 tests. The only one that really is a problem is this SharePoint right here, which has a 93% mean availability. Now, again, that's from all of the agents that are being tested against that. I'm not sure. That's the one I put the 4 agents on. So there could be like one agent that's having a problem, but the rest of the agents are fine. And then next up, we have our page load test. Similar data, almost 100% availability, but not quite. Again, the bottom 10 performing sites, it is that CCW that's taking us down. The overall response time for all of our tests. This is interesting as well, that we see this spike here going up. But it's still not crazy. 300 milliseconds is a good response time. If we saw a spike up to like 3,000 milliseconds, then I would want to investigate that further. Response time top 10 list. It looks like Office is my slowest application that I'm monitoring right now, followed by CCW. And then the overall page load time. So this isn't just response. Response is just to get that HTTP GET response. Page load is to download all the stuff that that page has on its landing page. And then finally, they have the Internet Insights built in. And this is just a snapshot of the internet health, outages happening everywhere. And this is built up of both the BGP collectors, but also all of the accumulated test data that the different customers are running. All right. I do have some resources too. That pretty much concludes the demo portion. I have a few resources for configuring, also for tutorials on ThousandEyes. I included a link to the ENNA exam. That's the Designing and Implementing Enterprise Network Assurance. That is a brand new exam that Cisco has released specifically related to ThousandEyes, Catalyst Center Assurance, Meraki Dashboard Assurance, and SD-WAN Assurance. And then we also have the Cisco ThousandEyes YouTube channel available. Yeah. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Andy.